Buenos días.
Good morning to all of you, all participants
De este evento. Laura,
from this event. Know that you're still in the wrong channel.
Yo estoy hablando español porque estoy escuchando y estoy conectado al canal de español. ¿Ya? Buenos días a todas y a todos
I would like to greet all of you for participating. We would like to especially thank
a los panelistas que aceptaron.
all of the panelists.
Sabemos que vivimos un momento bastante importante con
We know that we are in a very important time right now with all of the privatization. I would like to talk about the importance of working in public companies in our region. So TUCA and all of the, or many of the union organizations in the world thought about having this event. We would like to welcome all participants from the USA, from to Argentina, the whole Caribbean, and everything. We have more than 700 people that are online through Zoom, but we are also transmitting in 3 languages. On Facebook, we are also transmitting to Portuguese, in Facebook also from the also in Spanish, and Facebook from Union America as well in English. And we know that many of our organizations are also transmitting through their own Facebook accounts. So we hope we can reach a great number of participants. I don't want to keep on talking so much, but I would like to thank you right now. And I would like to give the floor to Rafael Freire. He's the General Secretary of the CSA TUCA. He's going to give you a greeting for all of the unions at world level. Rafael, I'll give the floor to you. And as I was saying before, when you have 1 minute left, I'm going to show you this. And when your time is up, I'm going to show you this. So I don't have to interrupt you. So thank you once again, Rafael. I'll give you the floor.
Good morning to everybody. Thank you, Marcio. I want to greet everybody in the name of the Union Conference of the Americas Workers and our 40 offices and affiliates, workers. I want to thank the global unions. I want to thank global unions, to the International of Public Services, Union Americas, to the International Federations of Transport Workers, to the construction workers, and the International Education for Latin American Workers for giving the trust, the work, for making this forum possible. The unity for the defense of the workers is necessary, and today it's very necessary. These initiatives broaden our capacity of response at an international level. The crisis that we are facing is worldwide nowadays because it has occupied the corruption state. We need to comply with the defense. In front of we want democratic states that guarantee the rights of the workers. The states as a power needs to involve the participation of workers or its consideration as a pattern. We need to promote decent work. We need to deepen the democracy and create a new relationship between state and workers. Our vision is a society in which we need to defend dignity and not exploitation of workers. We need to recognize public services as a right and not as merchandise. This is essential for democracy. To guarantee these rights with quality and in harmony with nature needs to be a priority, and it's a responsibility of states and governments. Governments has given public services to the corporate. The majority of the transnational companies do not guarantee the access to public services. They only are looking after income and profit, the human rights of the population, of the workers in different territories. We need to defend a treaty that makes transnational companies comply with their human rights. Many times, they try to make their image better than it is and privatizing public services and create bigger profits for them. The treaties, the commerce treaties and protection of investments only have deepened the instability of the region. Public services are one of the most affected, and they are under risk of privatization. The treaties need to be better and defend the population of workers. In Latin America, for example, in Venezuela and Argentina, we need to have a new fiscality to get out of this crisis. Workers shouldn't be the ones that pay for this crisis. We need to guarantee employment to foster economies and to contribute with the distribution of the richness. We need to recognize the role of the production and reproduction of life from the public services that foster employment. Unions are instruments of democracy. The values are there. Non-discrimination, organized of workers are essential for the construction of democracy and the guarantee of human rights. We need to create a new social contract that allows to get out of this crisis together. And this needs to be an opportunity to face the different challenges of climate change and inequalities. Our region is facing a threat from the extreme right. Communication and media have been threatening government in Argentina and against different governments. The criminalization in Colombia that's taking place and also in Honduras is something that is in the daily news. We are seeing attacks to all the rights that we have conquered in the past constantly. The unions are not on their own in this fight. We need to work together to construct a better democracy. And in the framework of today, we need to work together. And we need to fight for the rights of the working class. We need to express in the declaration of today our rights. We are making a mobilization on the 16th and 19th of November from our countries to defend democracy and the construction of different alternatives. Finally, I want to thank the colleagues of SAS Patricio, I want to thank the brothers and sisters that are assisting us in different parts of the region, to thank the panelists that are here to support what the unions have been working for in this fight for the future and the present. A special mention to my friend Ernesto Munro, which is a former president of the Ministry of Uruguay. He's always present. And today, 28 years ago, he was the first representative who was part in the representation of the Provision Bank of Uruguay, and this is very important. I want to thank everybody that made this possible and made this a success. And I have no doubt that from this forum, we will be together working with the unions in defense of public services, in defense of our people. Thank you very much, and a good forum to all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Rafael.
No tuvo la necesidad de levantar la
Well, we didn't need to show you the poster because you talked everything on time. So I would like to thank you once again, as Rafael said, being part of a greater movement, an international movement. This is International Day for Democracy, and we are also celebrating the International Day of Workers. And we are working with them, and do please participate in all of kind of events. And I'm going to be coordinating the first block with you, the first section, but now we're going to give the floor to our brother Daniel Chavez. He is an associate researcher in the Transnational Institute. He is specialized in left-wing policies and emancipatory way of thinking, management, and governance regarding the new social movements, reforms of the public services, alternatives to privatization, state companies and public services. He is an active collaborator of the Research Network for Projects and Municipalities. He has participated in volumes to alternatives to privatization and for essential services in the southern countries. He also wrote Intervention of the States in Uruguay. This is a book in Latin America and the world. Daniel, thank you for coming and accepting our invitation. We'll give you the floor, and you have 10 minutes. When you have 1 minute left, I'm going to show you this poster. And then when time is up, I'm going to show you another one saying your time is up. We'd like to welcome you to our event. We are listening to you from all over the continent, and we are also broadcasting in 3 languages. I will give you the floor. Well, first of all, I'd like to thank you. I would like to ask you so I can share the screen, please, if you allow me to do that. Could you please allow me to share the screen?
Okay. Bueno, muchas gracias, compañeros. Empieza a correr
thank you,
el reloj.
brothers and sisters. My time begins now. I'm going to cut through the chase because I don't have a lot of time. I'm talking from Amsterdam. Well, that is the name of my presentation, the resignification of the public state company in the international context. But before beginning, I would like to clarify that I'm talking in a union event. I am a member of a union, but I'm not going to talk on behalf of my union. I'm going to talk as a researcher, and I'm going to tell you my point of view, that a personal point of view, and this is related to what I have been working with in the institute that I work with.
Nosotros estamos trabajando sobre el tema de lo
We
público.
are working and everything that's related to the public companies, and for a long time we have been discussing everything regarding water. It's been 15 years. Then we started talking about remunicipalization, and then we went back to the return of the public, not just at world level, but also at national level.
No sé si están viendo mi...
I don't know if you're
presentación.
seeing my presentation. Maybe
Hola.
you are. Yes, we are. We are seeing your presentation.
Sí, ahora sí. Y después nos concentramos en temas que
Then we concentrated in topics related to public companies. We're thinking about the public. Everything relates to electricity and so on. So this was an introduction, and I just wanted to clarify my point of view right now. We are not the only ones who are interested in this. We see that at world level, those who are giving their opinions are also changing their discourse. Here we can see the covers of four magazines, important magazines that have been talking about this for the last 10 years. First of all, we need to take into consideration that those who defended neoliberalism that used to do this propaganda, nowadays, they're also changing their discourse. In 2012, The Economist, that is a magazine that is very influential regarding the neoliberal point of view, talked about public companies as a danger. They were saying that there was a state capitalism, the rise of state capitalism, and they have the fear of having too big, that the companies, state companies were too big. But then not everybody was sharing that opinion. Another magazine from the left wing, that is the New Internationalist, some years later, also published another report, a special report, highlighting the advance of public ownership with the re-municipalization and re-nationalization in different places of the world. But the most important thing is that those who were defending the neoliberalism and were against public companies nowadays are changing their discourse, their speech. This is the cover of The Economist, the magazine I had mentioned before, that in March in this year, we're saying that the state should come back, should gain control to control the pandemic. And this cover, that is from the weekly magazine from The Guardian from the UK, this is very graphic, because it talks about the state as a shelter from the storm. So they are admitting those who were against everything, and they say they were against the return of the states. They see that with the pandemic, they are seeing, actually, all of us, everything that relates to the economic orthodoxies are not valid anymore. And this is something that we already knew. And here we see something that we had published. Actually, it was published by some researchers that relates to one of the most important institutes of the world, where we see information with empiric experiments from all over the world and shows that privatization has failed in many places. And this is not just in the southern countries, but it also talks about the European countries. And here, as we can also see, I would like to advise you to read this. This was also published by Routledge International Handbooks. It says that the state enterprises are very strong at world level and that they're working in different sectors from the world economy and in different places. In the world, we see that in the last 15 years, nothing has changed from this reality, and that most of the biggest companies, the biggest enterprises at world level are state-owned companies. And this relates to the world of work because public or state-owned enterprises, as the OECD report says, they employ many million, hundreds of millions of workers around the world and in different sectors. And all of this has influenced the politics, of course. Now we're talking about a new Green Deal. We're talking about this in the United States, in Europe. That's where I live right now and where I'm working. Now maybe you recognize this person. Here we have Alessandra Castro Cortez. She's representing the progressist wing in the USA. And they are defending going back to the public enterprises for the ecological transition and the best social movement. We have also had a very strong discussion in countries that previously were presented as places where the idea of privatization was born. For example, the UK. Most of you might know that during the campaign of the previous 2 years in the UK, the campaign of the Labour Party, Jeremy Corbyn, was proposing to have a liberalization of the companies and investment in the public companies and services. The most important thing is that they just not say to recover those companies that we used to know them, but they propose for them to be more democratic, to be more efficient at social level, and to have better management, alternative management and models that actually work better than what they used before. The Labour Party was related to some researchers and brothers and sisters, and they developed a very interesting piece of work to rethink about the state-owned companies, and they published this called Alternative Models of Ownership, where they propose a very specific and interesting way of rethinking the state-owned enterprises. So, since I don't have a long time, I would like to talk briefly about some threats, tensions, and challenges. First of all, some opportunities and challenges. Here we see the cover of a book that we're going to publish next month. I'm presenting the book right now. I'm not just advertising it, but the idea is for you to see what's going on in the world in the coronavirus pandemic. We are working on the water companies, but I think many of the conclusions that arise from this book, that this is a collection of different research done in the world. This could be applied to different sectors of the economy. And we see that the pandemic has shown the importance of public companies, but it has also caused many problems for the state-owned companies. It has created problems for the workers, especially because they're vulnerable. We also see as an opportunity and as a challenge the creation of state-owned companies to different scales. For example, in Europe, we're talking about what's happening in countries such as Spain, where they propose the creation of new municipal or district companies. What we see in Barcelona, in the case of the electricity, this is not something isolated. This is also happening in many other places in the region. Also, as a challenge, we see the development of alternatives to the public management and to the orthodoxy of the corporate governance. And I'm going to end here, but we are creating the Latin American Council of Social Science. We are talking about high-level studies. We got public management, but we hope we can begin next year to face this reality. And to wrap up, as a challenge and opportunity, we see a proactive role of the union organizations and citizen organizations are working together, as it may happen in South Africa, where some environment and union movements are struggling to stop the privatization. And we see threats all over the world. Some days ago, this is a piece of news from Colombia, where they started with the debate once again, the privatization of state-owned companies. Those are important. We know what happened in Brazil with the new legal threats. So we know how this works. Well, that's what I wanted to say. Thank you.
Muchísimas gracias por su presentación. Te pido mil disculpas por hacer el papel.
I'm very sorry for being the backbone here,
Controlando los tiempos.
and I have to control time. Before going on to our next participant, I want to say that we have unions from all the American continent. We had over 600 union leaders who were inscripted. We have people from Mexico, Brazil, Argentina, Colombia, Paraguay, United States, Chile, Dominican Republic, Uruguay, Peru, Costa Rica. Yesterday in Costa Rica, they had a great strike under the motto of that the country won't sell itself. So I wanted to thank all the participants from Costa Rica. Our next participant, who is going to speak about how to finance public services, which is Susana Ruiz Rodriguez, and she works for Oxfam International. Before working for Oxfam, she's a regular participant of the international organisms as the IMF, the European Union, and other regional organisms. She was part of companies in Africa, in Asia and Latin America, and in regular debates with investigator journalists. She wrote many reports of Oxfam about inequality, and she contributes regularly in blogs and articles in Spain. And lastly, she wrote an article about how to face the challenges of COVID. Susana, thank you very much for being here. Welcome. I have the difficult task to coordinate time, so when there is 1 minute left, I will send you a message. And welcome, and go ahead. Good morning. Good morning and good afternoon for me in Spain, and thank you for this invitation because I think it's essential. Part of the work that we've been doing as organization has to do with the possibility to unite forces with the unions so that this is not only reports and analysis, but brings about a real change. For example, the initiatives of Costa Rica, as you well mentioned, prove that the movement and the reaction of the citizenship understands and is trying to stop certain changes that can bring about such an impact. I wanted to remind you that when we speak about mechanisms to find funding, we need to understand that Latin America is one of the regions that is going to suffer the most regarding the economic activity. It has worsened in its projections from the beginning of the pandemic, and it's also the region in which the recovery is going to be the slowest at a global level. So the scenario in which we are facing is very hard. It's very hard comparing to other countries, and it's very hard when we are looking about the future that we're facing. And this is very hard because it's a crisis that has blown in a region where there was already a crisis, when there was about unhappiness and a lot of inequalities and inability of the governments to adopt policies that would prioritize the funding of public services. One of the lessons of the past is that these 10 past years have showed us that the decisions being taken in the region have been bad and insufficient and inappropriate, and they have only contributed to bring about insufficient funds, and that involves very little among the capital and the richness. In the past 10 years, the public spending has been growing, and has been growing because it has been growing at the same level of the economy. And when this growth decelerates, then the debt increases. The public service has been stagnant, and the debt has increased, and the public debt has increased and has become the last resource to maintain the expenditure. This brings about a great problem and a great debt that we will have in future generations in the future. The public debt has grown in 3 times in this period, and so if this was already happening in the past, let's imagine how it will affect in a moment of crisis such as this. Thinking about this from a perspective of the people and their working life, what happened is that these bad decisions in the past in the past 10 years is now reflected in the reality of the countries. When we look at the fiscal systems of the countries, we see that they are extremely regressive. This is an analysis that we did very recently, a couple of months prior to the pandemic. In the case of Brazil, it's one of the countries which is having a great blow in this aspect. And in proportion, this is going to be even higher than in other countries. So we've seen that these are systems that have been putting upon all the efforts on the workers and middle-class workers, and they have increased the richness. The crisis, we saw this to be even worse. We always talk about the paradox that this is a crisis that has put in evidence and has showed that this hits everybody. Well, the reality is that it does not affect everybody in the same way. A report that we expressed in Oxfam in July regarding about who has the biggest burden, we saw that in the first months of the pandemic, the accumulated richness of the richest men of the region had increased greatly. And this represents around 38% of the stimulus package of the region. And in this time, we've seen 8 new multimillionaire people that have increased their richness every day. Let's imagine these millions of dollars that these people have gained, how much it could help public services. When we think about this, is that this crisis is the result of a model. At the beginning, Rafael mentioned a model that has to do with the neoliberal model. This shows that in the past 10 years, what has been going on is that we have seen a recovery of the company benefits and the dividends that have gone to the biggest stakeholders, and inequality of salaries. And we've also seen a fall in the taxes that big corporations have to pay. This is an analysis that we carried out in the 35 biggest companies in Spain, and it's a model that we see that happens in many countries, a neoliberal model that rewards big companies, but as a result, we see an effect in the workers. In the biggest part of the country, we see very few countries that are showing improvement in donations. One of the most important figures that we saw is the fall in employment and deceleration of many companies. This is a very international paradox that we can analyze, especially in American companies, that not all big companies suffer in the same way, and some corporations have grown in this period. For example, Visa, Microsoft have grown in the first months of the pandemic over 30 or 40%. These two realities shows that this is not a crisis that affects everybody, but that the tax system that we have does not allow us to have an effect on those who are generating the most. For Latin America, this is weakening and is showing how it's affects the growth of the economy. A fiscal system which is so unequal has limited the investment in public services and also has made public resources very fragile, especially for the health system and the care system for all the population. considering the big amount of population that we have. A decade of bad decisions and insufficient decisions slowly have led to this situation and making the countries be in the situation that they are right now. We're also seeing some countries that are seeing a decrease in their fiscal incomes, and this can represent a 59% of what could be spent in the health system. We need to take decisions. These decisions need to lead us to a new reality, and we need to revise what we are doing. In a minute, I will try to tell you we have solutions and we have alternatives, and they don't need to represent cuts. We need to find more incomes for political and social policies. We need to reduce the regressivity of the fiscal mix. In many countries, we started debates that in the past we didn't even have. This is something very revolutionary that was not present in the previous agendas. We calculated that we started an income for big incomes, a tax for big incomes, then we could raise a lot of money that it was not possible in the past. Then we need to finish with fiscal paradises. And this, for example, represent a loss, but also inequality for the rest of the country. One more minute, please. We have companies and sectors that continue to raise money because they take advantage of the gaps in the fiscal system, and we need to activate an agenda that changes these aspects. And the last decision that doesn't mean a cut is a decision regarding the orientation of policies. The resources of the countries shouldn't go to companies that aren't committed to society. It's essential to put certain conditions to how we use our resources in this moment, not only for equity, but also I wanted to thank everybody. The crisis shouldn't be paid by us. We need to change the decisions, public decisions, and we need to change. If we want to strengthen the government, we need to change. Thank you.
Thank you, Susana. We would like to apologize once again because I'm the bad guy, because I'm controlling time. I would like to also greet to the representation of Nicaragua, of Latin American representation of the Caribbean as well. We also have Friends of Earth from Uruguay, from Latin America. They're part of the Continental Day. They're also joining us. Now I'm going to give the floor to the next speaker. She's going to talk about the experience of the role of public management. Her name is Maria Fernanda Coelho. For me, as a Brazilian, it's very proud to see that this person who used to be a clerk at the bank, and she is the president of the union. And she is actually president of the Caixa Econômica Federal. She studied journalism, has a postgraduate degree in management. She has worked there in the Caixa from 1984. She began in her administration in 2006. Afterward, she was assigned by the Foreign Affairs Ministry in a cooperation project Brazil and Venezuela, and in the housing project that was looking forward to creating millions of houses in Venezuela. And welcome, Maria Fernanda. We would like to welcome you to the forum once again. Well, as you know, I'm the bad guy. I'm going to tell you when your time is up, and I'm going to give you the floor. And I will let you know when you have just 1 minute left. Thank you very much. You have the floor.
Bem, muito obrigada. Bom dia a
Thank you very
todos.
much.
Antes de entrar especificamente
So
no tema
before beginning with the specific topic about the importance of the state-owned companies in Brazil, I think it's very important to talk about the scenario we're living in Brazil. We're living the biggest crisis in the country. This is a generalized social, economic, environmental, and political crisis, first and foremost. We are in a deep economic crisis. We have economic hegemony that is controlled by financial capitals and international companies. We have been saving companies, of course. Billionaires are getting more, getting richer. We have normally we have stakeholders, shareholders. Those are the most important people, the richest people in all Brazil. From these 206 people, we have 42 billionaires that have so much money. We have, Susanna Reis also talked about this. Everything relates to taxing. And you have the reflection of this in the social area. In Brazil, we have 60 million workers, adult workers, that have no work, that are totally listless. And this came from the opposition. We have the national parliament, the federal parliament, that could approve helping service or money helping salary. But everything has been worse. The research of the family state in Brazil in 2017 and 2018 showed that was actually before the pandemic, shows the effect of the approval of an amendment in the constitution that established a cap for expenditures, having more than 50% of the population of Brazil living in the northern and northeastern parts of the country. They have food lack of security. 1/3 of the population of Brazil has this problem. And we have more than 3 million households in Brazil that have a very deep problem with food security. They are starving. So when we compare the research that was done in 2013, the households where women are in head of the households, the situation was different. It was from 79% to a lesser degree. That is when the man is the head of the household. And from 70% to 58% when you have women. The households that have problems like this also increased. So that is always happens when you have a male head of household. You have 95% to 15% when you have a woman in the head of the household. So the gender gap is very, very big. We have a very big environmental crisis. The Amazonia is living in a terrible situation. You have more than 30,000 fires. The Pantanal, that is a place in Brazil, is burning. Right now, where I am, in the middle of the country, we have a historic crisis of temperature degree. We have 5 degrees above the national historic situation. We have a crisis in the justice system. We are trying to impeach 2 governments, and nobody cares about that. Population is not caring about that. And we have the health crisis. This is a moment in which countries are trying to create efforts to overcome this. We see the opposite. The Brazilian government has not letting, for example, indigenous people to have access to medication. We have a position from the governors that had some kind of a perspective of the pandemic control. We have more than 136,000 casualties, and this is responsibility of the country. We had 2 things that happened that are very important regarding state-owned companies. The first one of those is, of course, the single health system. It has been always criticized, but that allowed to have a minimum response. This assured that we have some kind of response regarding the pandemic. Then I can also talk about the Caixa, and regarding the experience with workers, this has allowed us to have more than 60 million people to have the emergency income that was approved by the National Congress. This was for the workers that have no employment. In 2008, in the second period of administration of Lula, we could see the capacity of the public banking of Brazil that showed their strength. We had
dos bancos privados,
a lot of problems with the banking loaning policies. That is very different to what the private companies and the public bankings did. The public banking expanded 12% of the loans to companies, to people. Also, this moment, the federal government, in the administration of President Lula, we had the program called My House, My Life. We already shared this experience with Venezuela
gerou
until the Congress coup in 2016 generated 4 million employment
essas
in
reflexões
Venezuela. So all of these reflections about the importance of the state companies in Brazil and all of the international movement is important for you to see how central, how core it is to have this reflection. That is, what I wanted to say
a primeira delas
is that the first thing we need to do is change our focus. We need to stop thinking about the perspective we have and access to tools from public management. We need to build new policies related to our reality. That is, having work as a core, solidarity, and we need to have a strategy regarding communication to have a dialogue with the everyday kind of dialogue with people. I hope this is a motivation and an inspiration for our struggle. Thank you very much.
Obrigada, companheira Maria Fernanda. Muitos sindicalistas e
Thank
sindicalistas
you. We have many unions from Brazil.
também aqui o
We
Happy
also
with this?
have
We have one of our
someone
brothers today.
from
We are seeing strike,
Greve
a general
Geral
strike
contra as privatizações e
against
the
privatization, neoliberalism. Many Brazilian people that are present from the Amazonas, the Amazons, and how the government has dealt with the crisis.
Volto a falar em espanhol. Bueno, nuestro próximo participante,
Our next participant,
bueno, ahora que tengo una
now that I have someone from Uruguay, I'm very happy. Since we were very happy to listen to Maria Fernandez from Brazil, now I'm very happy to listen to someone from Uruguay because he was very important when he was a Minister of Labor in Uruguay. And now I anticipate that he will speak about the importance of the public sector, the role of the state, and the participation of unions. Our brother Ernesto Murro was a teacher. He started his political career as part of the Frente Amplio party. He was a political prisoner, and then he became a union leader, and he represented one of the sectors that are present here today, the sector of the construction. He came director of the workers of the Provision Bank. He was one of the main promoters of the plebiscite in 1989. He was the president of the Social Provision Bank of Uruguay, and then he became Minister of Labor of Uruguay. He was very important in the relations with the unions of the country. Ernesto, good morning. Thank you for being here and participating of the forum. I give you the floor, and I will tell you when you have 1 minute left, and when your time is up, I will let you know. I'm sorry again for being the bad one here and cutting you off. Welcome, and you have the word. Good morning. Good afternoon. Thank you very much. I truly appreciate. It's a pleasure to meet with you here, with my brothers and sisters here from the union world. Many of you, I have had the chance to meet you and work together with you. Thank you to all the organizations present here today and for being part here today with people such as Susana, Maria Fernanda, Daniel, with you, Marcio. I'm here present in the Trade Union office here in Uruguay, and I want to thank you, Rafael, and everybody. I think that this event that is happening here today is very important. I think it's extremely beneficial to organize this type of events. I am a bit old right now. I have my years, and I come from a country which is a bit special, as every country. We just lost in our national elections in a country that, as you well know, is considered to be between the 10 and 20 most complete democracies of the world. And after being in power for 15 years, and after governing 30 years of the capital of Montevideo, we lost national elections. And this I am telling you because I think this is part of the reflection of the opinion that we want to share today with you. This country is one of the less privatized countries historically in Latin America. Here in Uruguay, the water belongs to the state. Electricity is of the state, the government. The main communication company that competes and beats other companies is a state company. We have a system, a national system, which is a national health system, which is integrated, and a security social program, which is national. And in the 15 years that our government was in power, we improved this. In these past 15 years, we improved the salaries, the pensions, over 60%. We built a new fiscal system. We are between the three countries that Susana mentioned that have a tax for wealth, and we created a better and fair system. But despite this, we lost national elections. And I think, in our opinion, it's part of the analysis that we need to do. We have a country which is among the few countries in which the left is united. The Frente Amplio party is going to be 50 years next year of union. We have a country in which the Union Central is unique, is singular, and it has been this way since 1965. And we lost elections. I think this is part of what we need to analyze here today. I think the world is changing. And with these changes that are happening in the world, where the more conservative, rightist sectors are advancing and democracy is seen to be weaker, we also have to face the pandemic. which has led us and will continue to lead us to a difficult situation. This pandemic will continue for a whole of this 2020 year, and this will have a great impact. As many of you, the three panelists that already spoke, mentioned. My reflection now wants to highlight if we are capable of looking within us. In Uruguay, we are starting to analyze why we lost the elections. But I think that from within the union to evaluate certain aspects, we're in a world in which we need to be extremely sensible and sensitive to this pandemic. People are extremely sensible. We have lots of uncertainties, of fears. We don't know what will happen. Our friends are dying, our neighbors, our colleagues are dying. And this is a very sensible aspect. And that brings about great respect. We have to respect those that think similar to us and respect those who think differently, because this pandemic is one of the most universal pandemics that we have, and it's very unpredictable. But it's having significant consequences, as my colleagues already mentioned, both economically and socially. And I think that we need to be extremely respectful of all different ideologies. A third aspect is language. I think we need to be able to have an accessible language which is understandable for people. Because why do I say this? Why do I think language is very important? Because workers, small producers, small business owners, informal workers, people with disabilities, the very poor need to be able to understand us. Because I think we're in a world in which in these years, a great movement has been going on that involves deeper politicization. And many times, in my case, even in our country, I see that when you speak about neoliberalism, you need to explain what it is. You need to explain these terms. You need to explain what transnationals are, because this movement where people are losing ideologies, this individualism that is present here today, that we want everything to happen right now, immediately, has led to less conversations, less analysis. Another aspect about this reality is that we are in a world, and I'm sorry, but with all my respect, I need to speak about things about the union movement, where we have more and more central unions. If one might think that if we have more unions, the movement is going to be stronger, but no, because we have more and more unions and less affiliation and less unity. I think we need to have a coordination, and I hope that would lead to a unity, because as the brothers and sisters that spoke before me said, this is extremely delicate. If we continue to be divided among our unions and we have less affiliates in our unions, I think we will have extremely big challenges to face. And another very important issue has to do with to speak not to the affiliates that we speak every time, to those who vote our leaders, but we need to speak to the population itself, because I think that is part of the new process that we need to carry out. We need to defend democracy. We are assisting a process where democracy is being weakened. Maybe we are in one of the 10 or 20 countries that have the better democracy in the world. But even here in Uruguay, this is changing. We're seeing the democracy being affected. I think that this will bring about the need of unions, education in unions and education in democracy. This that we are doing right now is for union leaders, but it's also necessary to speak to the population. But we have two important strengths. In this pandemic, we strengthened the role of the state and also the solidarity. I think that we need to be able, from the social movement and from the union movement and from the left, we need to take advantage of this opportunity where the government and solidarity are in advantage. But we will only be able to do this if we are able to coordinating and creating unities, because on their own, no one in any country, if you're not able to coordinate and create certain unity, you won't be able to face and to fight against the big power that is the multimillionaire companies and the threat of the democracy. Thank you very much.
Thank you, brother Ernesto Murro. It was very interesting to hear you. And I have to mention, some brothers and sisters already mentioned this, there are consequences. Everything relates to the elections. We have a lot of people who are pro the lack of improvement of the state-owned companies. We have people in the unions of IABU, people working in the fuel sector. We're talking about the risks of the new policies. I'm mentioning this because it's important. And I would like to mention as well, I would like to greet the representation from Guatemala. And with this, we are finishing our first section. And I would like to thank very much all of the speakers who were here today, Daniel, Susana, Maria Fernanda, and our brother Ernesto Murro, for participating and being here with us. I would like to also give the floor to our sister Jessie Mayara. She's going to talk to you in Portuguese. So we're going to change a little bit about this. I hope she's going to speak in Portuguese. We're going to change a little bit regarding the language, but I would like to thank you once again. And we are transmitting, broadcasting in Spanish, in English, and in Portuguese. PSI, Facebook is in Portuguese, and in Spanish we have the TUCA, and in English we have the Facebook of Uni, and many of our affiliates are also broadcasting live. And now we have Zoom, more than 400 participants. So we have a lot of people. We have people that go from Canada up to Argentina. We have everyone from the Andean region and the Caribbean. So we would like to thank all of you for the participation. JC, I'm going to give you the floor. Thank you very much. And here you have the second section. Good morning. Good afternoon, actually. Marcio, thank you for giving me the floor. I hope I can work as well as you do, and I'm going to be the bad person showing you the posters. I'm Mayara Brigi. I'm one of the coordinators of the ICP, and I'm coordinating the youth from the grassroots unions. I would like to begin saying that as a young person, it's very important for us to commit against the privatization in defense of the public sector services. We need to defend the society. You need to have the best quality possible. And we need to remember that the public services allow us to have universal basic rights. and that the neoliberal policies, they want to make everything capitalism, mercantilized. We cannot allow this as workers. We need to commit, and with this, we need to keep on struggling to live in a fair society. And since we are already talking about some unions regarding youth, we need to organize as youth a seminar to gather our strengths and to build up a resistance against the privatization of the publicly the state-owned company. Now we have a different group of unions are going to talk about their experience, trade union experiences. In this second section, we have 5 minutes for each of you, so our brothers and sisters can talk about their experience in the same way as Marcel did. I'm going to show you the poster to show you how much time you have left and when our time's up. First of all, we're going to listen to our sister Rita Serrano. She is from the Brazilian National Committee for the Defense of Public Companies. Rita, please, I would like to welcome you. I'm going to give you the floor. You have 5 minutes, and when you have just 1 minute, I will let you know. Welcome.
É uma alegria participar desse primeiro encontro internacional em defesa das empresas e serviços públicos, uma iniciativa
Public
extremamente
services.
importante nesse momento,
Um,
que também é evento que dá
It's very important,
de luz na
and it's also
nada mais
event
democrático do que entidades
that
sociais organizadas
takes into consideration the democracy
melhor para a sociedade.
for unions
Esse encontro
and showing what is the best for the society in the world.
união e
This gathering is an example of
entendo
union and organization of the workers.
necessário
I understand this is very innovative and very necessary
e ações globalizadas, já que o capital é globalizado, cada dia mais
the capitalism is more globalized, therefore our actions should be in the pandemic showed us the inequality and social inequality in the world,
e os pobres cada dia mais miseráveis.
and many of the panelists already spoke about this, how the rich became richer and the poor more miserable, and this exposed the government role. I want to congratulate everybody, the unions which organized this, the federations, the unions, UNI,
Também os palestrantes e participantes que estão aqui conosco e que
and also to the panelists and participants that are here present today
representar o comitê
and that help us in the social media. It's for me an honor to represent
sociais que têm em comum
those
a defesa
com-
do patrimônio
so-
público, a defesa
those companies that have in common the defense
conosco, participando
of
cidades que levam
the public services. Here we have present very important entities which are present
da Embrapa e vários outros
of different sectors,
do mundo inteiro. Vivemos momento muito triste e difícil
many from Brazil and from other countries.
que
This is a very tough moment for everybody. We have millions of deaths every day.
no Brasil a
The crisis is very important and very significant.
colocou o Brasil em rota de
In Brazil, for example, we have a neoliberal government which is very conservative and led Brazil to a very difficult situation. The Brazilian government is trying to destroy the government
do serviço público.
and to privatize the public services.
Esse fórum que aqui
And this has worsened the situation of the country even more. The committee that I'm representing here today has found
da organização
the need to fight against this,
da ex-presidenta Dilma. E como eu disse aqui, agrega várias entidades.
and we need to
Foram muitas as
face this situation together.
no debate com a sociedade e, como disse,
Many actions were carried out. For example,
na narrativa, na disputa ideológica,
we need to
politização
speak about the ideology,
colocada com relação ao papel do Estado.
our role is to
Estamos nesse debate com a sociedade, fizemos também várias audiências públicas.
emphasize on the debate with the society. We also carried out many public audiences with universities,
Como alicerce, que inclusive
always with the press present or communication media present on Brazilian media. For example, on October the 3rd, we had a great action against Petrobras. We were trying to sensibilize the population about the importance of the public services, which are of everybody. And this is very simple. Everything that is public and collective should attend to the citizens and the interests of the citizens of the society. The perspective of the privatization for the consumer, it is not possible to think of a state that has policies that only care about those who can pay. Public services are essential and need to continue. So we made a lot of actions about the public services and public companies, trying to show the importance of public companies.
públicas e privadas e deve ser combatida, mas as empresas públicas, como eu disse aqui, o serviço público tem que olhar para
And the public services,
social, para a melhoria da qualidade de vida.
they need to look to the social development, how to improve the quality of life of the population. This could
Essa cartilha, inclusive, já quero aqui informar vocês, nós estamos traduzindo para o espanhol para dar como contribuição.
we need to how to contribute.
Também fizemos livro chamado
We also created a book that is called, it's a campaign
justamente de
that
população de que o que é público.
tells how the population needs to keep what is public, public.
Temos esse livro no Brasil todo,
This book was sold in Brazil
vai e na Argentina.
and also in Uruguay and Argentina.
Enfim, em
To conclude,
todos os segmentos sociais,
together with all the social movements, we are trying
no dia a dia,
to change our narrative to appeal the population. And it's necessary to have a society which debates
todos os países
in all the countries
que está colocado
about what,
colocadas com relação à diminuição do tamanho
about the threats,
e à quebra de
about
públicas que possam criar desenvolvimento.
the destruction of public policies.
Não podemos permitir que as grandes multinacionais
We can't allow that the big multinationals define the state and the government
desenvolvimento e mundo mais justo e igualitário.
for a development to happen and to have a fair and more equal world. We need to have a strong government which is organized and it is committed to the society. Therefore, this event is very important, is very innovative, and can help us a lot, and can help democracy and the different entities which are committed with the future. I hope this is the first of many to come.
Todos e todas. E para encerrar de vez, uma frase que eu acho muito bonita de Santo
And to conclude, I want to say a sentence which I think is very important,
Esperança tem duas filhas lindas.
which is the hope has two daughters,
Indignação nos
the courage and indignation, which
Obrigado, companheiros e companheiras.
the courage allows us to change things that we don't like. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Rita. I would like to invite Mark from the union from the United States. He's going to talk. Now you have 5 minutes, and when the time's up, I will show you the poster, okay?
Solidarity greetings, sisters and brothers, and I want to thank the TUCA for organizing this event on the important occasion of the World Day for Decent Work and for the opportunity to briefly speak to you today. The American Postal Workers Union brings together 200,000 postal workers in the United States. We're affiliated with the AFL-CIO and with UNI, the global union, as we recognize the challenges facing working people are global and they require an organized and internationalist response. Our union was created out of a national, militant, and illegal strike 50 years ago, where postal workers fought for and won union rights and family-sustaining jobs, turning postal work in the United States into decent work. We're also public servants committed to the mission of the public postal service, to bind the people together through affordable and universal mail service. Through the pandemic, postal workers, along with all essential workers the world over, have demonstrated once again that it is the working class that does indeed make the world go around. For decades, right-wing forces fueled by Wall Street interest and private delivery companies have tried to defund and degrade the public postal service, all with the aim to dismantle and sell it to private interests to maximize private profit. The goal of international capital to privatize public services, whether it's in transport and transit, mining, education, water, and postal, has existed over many decades and across the administrations of both major U.S. political parties. Our struggles did not start with, nor will they end with, the current president of the United States, Donald Trump. But they have intensified with this administration's written plans to sell off and privatize the United States Postal Service. Our situation may sound very familiar to all of you, but perhaps most of all to our Brazilian brother and sister postal workers who are now on the front lines of a privatization fight in their country. And I want to recognize their heroic strikes this year and reaffirm our solidarity with them. In the United States, we believe the struggle to defend the U.S. Postal Service from privatization is vitally important. First, good family sustaining and community building union jobs will be destroyed if the Postal Service is privatized. Our collective bargaining agreements with strong job security, safety protections, decent pay, and other benefits would likely be smashed. Second, the people would lose their democratic right to universal and low-cost postal services and will suffer increased rates and service cuts. And third, only in the public sphere can postal services be expanded to address societal needs and broader democratic services such as basic financial services. Postal banking has aided financial inclusion worldwide, and we need it in the United States. And finally, winning our fight to save the public postal service is essential to advancing our movement's broader struggles to empower workers and to expand our fight for economic and social justice for workers everywhere. For if we cannot defend the United States Postal Service, our public postal service, our union, and our jobs, how can we win a national health care program based on health care as a human right, or organize the vast unorganized workforce in logistics, delivery, and other sectors, and build a political movement that recognizes the value of the public commons and collective life? In a society as unequal as the United States and driven by Wall Street greed, it's not hard to see why there's a big target on the back of the public postal service. The COVID crisis, its negative economic impact on the postal service, resulting in its need for emergency COVID financial relief, is shamefully being used by the privatizers to attempt to carry out their agenda. The Postal Service in the United States is the most trusted public agency. I'm confident that postal workers and the public will win our struggle to defeat the privatizers. We have mobilized thousands of our members and supporters into the streets in hundreds of demonstrations across the country and in other strong actions. And we've sent a clear message to politicians that the people strongly support the public postal service of the United States. One last point. The current U.S. election underscores the intersection of public postal services and democratic rights. Tens of millions of voters will only be able to safely vote by voting by mail. The wealthy and powerful are trying to suppress democracy by incessantly attacking voting by mail and postal workers. While U.S. elections are polluted by the influence of vast corporate money, the democratic right to vote is a cherished one. And once again, postal workers are rising to defend it. In the U.S. election underway, the executive board of the American Postal Workers Union has endorsed Joe Biden for president as part of a needed effort to drive an anti-union, anti-worker, white supremacist fascist from the White House in Washington, D.C. But no matter the outcome of the current U.S. elections, our union will continue to unite with the people of the country, with the other postal unions, with many allies, and with postal workers the world over in defense of our democratic right to public postal services. The U.S. mail is not for sale, and what's public stays public. Solidarity forever, compañeras y compañeras. Thank you.
Obrigada, Mar.
Gracias, Mar. Muchas gracias por tus contribuciones. Ahora va a seguir el Now the colleague Edwin Palma is going to continue. He comes from IndustriALL. Edwin, welcome. 5 minutes. We are having technical difficulties. So now we will move on with Benito Baena until we continue to sort out the problem with Edwin. Benito, please be welcome. He represents the Alianza de Transvarios from Mexico. Brother Benito, you have 5 minutes. I will let you know when you have 1 minute left. Thank you very much. First of all, I want to say hi on behalf of all the workers from Mexico and all the transport unions. And I want to express unity and dignity. The importance of transport of passengers in Mexico started in the 19th century. Since 1857, when the first ferry started, we created the first train company. And in that moment, the fight of the workers of the transport started, not only to defend the union rights and the conquest of its workers, but also to support other organizations, other unions. On 15th of January of the 1900s, the system started rolling in the capital city, and therefore the first electric line started to work and brought about modern systems. And therefore the workers started to organize in this aspect. Therefore, from the first strikes in the 1900s and 1924 against the low salaries and the indecent work, the workers are showing their strength. These strikes make the Mexican government to retrieve the services that were part of the private companies of the Mexican trains and the streetcars. These were acquired on the 23rd of November of 1952. The different union leaders have defended that this transfer belongs to the Mexican government for it to be subsidized in benefit of the citizenship. Also, they have been fighting for better working conditions for the workers, and was possible through all the 20th century and the 21st century. In 2015, the current administration presented a project that would look for the improvement of the transport services and the Mexican trains through an awareness campaign which involved not only workers, but also the users. This was without taking into account that that government, that was a neoliberal government and had privatized many companies in different sectors. Very surprisingly, on the 25th of July 2015, there were violent actions that took place, and the general director of that time of the transport company convinced some workers to destitute in an anti-democratic way to the general secretary and the executive committee. These actions had to be explained, and they were trying to privatize this company or to make it part of the public system, the private system. These actions were under the authorization of the governor of the Mexican capital. Having knowledge that in a meeting, the government took the decision to make this transport system obsolete, trying to acquire the power of this, since in many countries, the trolley buses have seen an increase. I talk about this because we carried out a campaign which is Save the Trolley Bus, which created a project of sustainable transport which is secure and economic, which was sent to the candidate of government for her to analyze, to include it in her administration. Unfortunately, it was taken into account, and nowadays, in Mexico City, we have 200 trolley buses with first-class technology, and they cover 75 kilometers. And this will be added to more lines of trolley buses with more projects. They will install and train workers to improve the quality of the service with social tariffs and improve the working conditions, improve salaries, and support the non-pollution of the environment, which is very much needed. I consider that the most important thing of this defense of privatization of electric transport had to do with the International Federation of Workers, specifically ITF Americas. So I wanted to thank the opportunity to speak to you with these unions and our union, which is very old, and I will try to avoid the privatization of state companies. Thank you very much, brothers and sisters of the different federations and confederations. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Benito. I would like to thank you for your contributions.
Então, agora já resolvemos o problema técnico com o companheiro Edivin Palma.
We already solved the technical problem we had, and I'm going to give the floor to Edivin. He works with the Colombian oil company. He's a representative of IndustriALL. We'd like to welcome you, our brother. You have 5 minutes, and I will let you know when you have almost no time. Good morning, all of you, brothers and sisters, and good afternoon as well for those who are in different parts of the world. First of all, I would like to thank you for the invitation to discuss a little bit about this. And I have heard about these challenges we have in different countries. It is a very difficult situation of defending what is owned by the state. The unions of oil, the union I am representing, this is a union that has 25,000 workers at national level in Colombia as a whole. We are in more than 26 territories. We were born in 1923. So it was like 3 years after the beginning of the oil exploitation in the country. So we have been working for almost 100 years, and we have always been defending. And the story goes that after a strike between 1946 and 1948, the state, the oil state of Colombia, the company, was born, and this has been threatened by all neoliberal, pro-capitalism governments. This is different from ours. In our experience, we haven't had the chance of having an alternative government. We have always been ruled by the right, and we have the extreme right coming in 2002. We will Álvaro Uribe Vélez. He is now in jail because he was blackmailing, and he has private capital in the Colombian oil company, what we call the democratization of the company. We believe that this democratization is an euphemism for privatization. This is just a euphemism for this. What was done is to incorporate private capital in the company. Nowadays, we have a small amount, less than 10% of the company. The company is still a public company. So we are issuing, in the pandemic, the country issued a decree that is trying to sell from the back door in a very fast manner public companies to buy private ones. But we created a union of parties to be able to cancel this decree, having to intervene in this constitutional court. I'm mentioning this because, as we have heard in different interventions, there is an intention of hurting everything what's public. Neoliberalism has won somehow in this ideological battle. I liked what the minister from Uruguay said. Actually, he said that we haven't spoke to general population. So liberalism has won this battle in the defense of the public. He's winning in the from the ideological point of view, because we understand that the public is something that is for people and that might be invaded by the private. I mean, we have to say the opposite. We need to go against the neoliberalism so the citizenship can understand those who we have never spoken to. We have to let them know that everything that is public and needs to stay like this. We need to have political alliances to achieve this. I think it's very important to say all of this, and we need to reflect on the crisis of democracy and how important our tasks are when defending our state-owned companies. And we would like to thank all of you, brothers and sisters, in these important union organizations in the continent and in the world. For example, IndustriALL in our case. So thank you once again for your attention and for listening to us. And these were my brief reflections. I would like to greet all of you, brothers and sisters in the world.
Obrigada, Edwin.
Thank you, Edwin.
Chato de controlar o tempo. Companheiro ficou dentro do
I'm
tempo.
sorry, I have to control time.
Oscar,
Now we will invite our brother Oscar Rodriguez from Contaguas.
companheiro.
Please be welcomed here. You have 5 minutes. I will let you know when your time's up.
Muchas gracias, JC. Bueno,
Thank you, JC. Good morning and good afternoon to everybody, brothers and sisters,
para todas y todos.
to everybody. Given the short time that we have, I will try to be a bit brief. And in that sense, I would like to put some context of the situation of water in the region based on the context of some process that we've been working in different platforms of fight and resistance against the privatization, and specifically, I mentioned the Network Water and the Confederation of Workers of Water, and more recently to the National organization in Brazil. And mentioning that context, first I want to highlight that the management of water needs to be subsidized and with public funding as a government responsibility. In second place, we need to recognize that the privatization has different phases, and are not only to improve the quality of life, both for the people, the communities, and for the workers. Thirdly, given the pandemic and the framework of the 2030 agenda, and specifically taking into consideration the objectives of the sustainable development, and in this context, mentioning the objective number 6, the quality water, governments are being forced to open the public companies of water and sanitation for public and private investment in order to favor the big companies, multinational companies that are trying to have as an aim to accumulate even more profits and to broaden the inequality and the social inequality. Given that context, brothers and sisters, we've been following this process of resistance, given that intention in some countries of the region. And I give us an example: Mexico, El Salvador, Colombia, Peru, Brazil, Chile, and of course, Guatemala. In Chile has over 90% of its companies of water and sanitation in private hands, and with a legislation that favors exclusively the private sector. In December of this year, in this platform that I already mentioned, we hope to have a first report finished, which represents and expresses the state and the situation of water and sanitation in Latin America, and we will send it to you when we have our first report finished. Finally, our job and our aim is to fight and close the door to privatization and to achieve from the construction the social process together with the unions of the different alliances, the democratization of water in order to guarantee that the states continue to be constitutional and comply that the water is a human right and not a merchandise. And with that goal in mind, we find necessary to finance and to fund by applying better fiscal controls and trying to avoid the tax evasion. From ICP, we are trying to carry out a campaign which is under the name Fiscal Justice, and we're carrying out an analysis about the behavior of the big multinational companies which are in Latin America, that they take advantage of the pandemic, and some governments are being forced to open public entities and essential services to foreign investments from multinational companies to try to avoid this. And in the context of the pandemic, they're taking advantage. And with that aim, we are developing some campaigns which are very important, and we are taking advantage of these platforms, these virtual platforms in which we can communicate to develop processes not only of investigation, but of training and of education and of exchange of information and of expertise to improve our development and our performance, to provide better quality, not only of union growth, and also to have better efficiency of the constitution of our countries. Of course, my colleagues that are working with me, we celebrate this kind of initiatives that make us much more closer to create unions and to be more effective, and provides answers and solutions not only for workers but for communities and to the society in general that has expressed to be reluctant to accept privatization of public service. Thank you very much, and I congratulate everybody present here today.
Thank you, Brother Oscar. And now we're going to give the floor to Brother Converti Rodriguez. He's from the International Field Education. We would like to welcome you. You have 5 minutes. I will let you know when time is up. Well, I would like to greet you. Because of time restrictions, I'm going to give you some information regarding what's going on in the education sector. I'm not going to restate everything that has been said regarding the advance of the neoliberal model, but instead of this, I'm going to tell you that there is a reposition, a very clear one, of the private sectors, also everything that is within the framework of what's going on with the COVID pandemic. In that sense, I would like to also say that the Internacional Educación has installed for 8 years a world campaign in terms of the advance of the privatization processes of education and of educational trade. This is a task that is in every country of the world, and this is a strategic goal for the Internacional de Educación, Education International. And I would like to say that during the pandemic, we have a key challenge for the public sectors in the educational sector, and that is having the educational platforms installed. And of course, private corporations and some other enterprises at national level as well are also installing everything that revolves regarding the virtuality in education, and that is competing against the on-site teaching regarding the public sectors in every country. That means that once all of this happens and goes away, we have this challenge in every one of the countries regarding educational public systems. And this challenge is called the virtuality against the on-site presence, so to say. Something else I want to say is that there is, of course, in all of this situation of this installing of the neoliberal project, a framework of international institutions that are, without any doubt, trying to homogenize what's going on in every country before this privatization process and commercialization or trading of education and everything that relates to the public sector. And these institutions, I need to tell you clearly, in the case of Latin America, is the IDB, the International Bank for Development, Inter-American Development. At the world level, it's the World Bank and the OECD, and the United Nations are as well. These have been taken by the private sectors, and there is a clear effort to normatize everything that is happening with the policies and with the private policies. And we have to take something into consideration, everything that is going on, especially regarding this logic of the state and how this has been shaped. That is using money, public money, to do something private, to have private benefit with public money. This is an essential issue that we need to take into consideration because this is something that is being installed as a private version, that is using the public funds to have private benefit. As you have seen in many of the countries, in all of the countries in Latin America and somewhere else as well, in other parts of the world, something that is called public-private associations. What is this? We need to see that very clearly. This means that they're using public funds to create private benefit, where the public sector is putting the money and they all also assuming all of the losses. So we have a very clear process in which we have a clear version of the development of public policies, but these are not public policies for the social development. These are public policies to strengthen the private sector. This relates, brothers and sisters, with everything that relates to this and that what has been said, and I want you to confirm, I want to confirm this. We are also seeing this. That is this state model where we are repositioning the private and when we're using the public funds to strengthen the private sector. And this is a model that is deteriorating the state and that is strengthening the private. So to us, this is against the logic that is being developed in Latin America, where we cannot accept the dialogue. They cannot accept the dialogue. They are harming democracy. The only government that I say has an open government with the union movement, because we need to say that, is the government of Argentina, of President Fernandez, national government. But apart from this government, no government has established a dialogue with the union movements because there's a clear strategy to kill the union movement, to violate their rights, their working rights. And to wrap up in the minute I have left, I have to say that the challenge we have ahead of us is a challenge of thinking and structuring a proposal of a state model. We cannot continue to have this. We need to think about a proposal of the state model. This proposal has to be alternative. This has to be related to social development. And this brings us to two main topics we need to take into consideration. First of all, the alliances with society. This has to be open. And on the other hand, we need to have alternative proposals for a state model. We cannot keep on calling we cannot keep on saying we have a right state, and this needs to be present. We need to foster this. This is a vision of the social state and the compromise we need to choose. And finally, I want to say that in Costa Rica, as we said before, there is a lot of movement regarding privatization of services, also before the sale of public institutions that the neoliberal government of this country is trying to promote, and also regarding not having a negotiation with the International Monetary Fund. This is not something small. The negotiation with this International Monetary Fund is important. They are opposing social sectors in the country. Thank you very much.
Obrigado, companheiro. Agora eu vou
Thank
passar a
you,
palavra.
brother. Now I will give the floor to Claudia da Silvia Gomes from Conticom, Brazil.
Seja muito bem-vindo, companheiro.
Please be welcome. You have 5 minutes.
Aviso quando faltar minuto.
I will let you know when you have 1 minute left. Good afternoon to everybody. I will try to summarize. We had in Brazil a problem, a very serious problem regarding the construction of infrastructure, the heavy construction. We had destruction of the main construction companies in Brazil. We had big companies working outside of the country. The action of the public ministry of fighting corruption finally destroyed the companies. It was not necessary to destroy the companies. And many workers lost their jobs. We have less than 10% of the labor that we had, and the majority of them are looking for work. This is a very difficult situation that we're facing. This also affected the ability of the country to produce infrastructure. Now we have to open up to foreign companies, American companies, to fill in the work that was being done by Brazilian companies. For example, of oil platforms, the construction that was being done by Brazilian companies were destroyed. And this is a very serious situation. We have an absence in this sector, and therefore the resources of investment, there is no public funding for constructions of roads, of trains. We do not have the resources available. Also, the government made that the main bank, BNBS, gave back 100 million reais. Today, we can't fund an industrial plant and the construction of machinery. That is, on the other hand, the ability of funding has been reduced for the habitational sector. In Brazil is now the Guarantee Fund, which fostered the program My House, My Life, and this program helped millions of people to get out of risk situations, and these resources that in the past came from the IGDF now are trying to improve the economy without leaving any chance to succeed with the resources which are now freed. We cannot implement new processes in the economy. On the other hand, we have the ability to fund the construction without them. The fund of guarantee now is in crisis because we do not have resources to continue this. We also have no dialogue and recognition of the unions with the government. This leads us to try to improve the role of the unions in the negotiation process without interruption of the justice, because the justice is also working with the neoliberalism. We live in an environment which is dominated by conservatives, and this exposes a force against the unions. And this is a situation which is very difficult, and we need to fight against this barrier.
Thank you, Claudia. Now we're going to give the floor to the last intervention. She's going to talk about the union movement. You have Elaine Davis is from the local association from Jamaica. I would like to give you the floor. You have 5 minutes, and we will let you know when time is up.
Good morning, brothers and sisters. Am I being heard? Okay, the situation in the Caribbean is one. The situation in the Caribbean is one in which we have seen since the 1970s the rise of neoliberalism, where Caribbean territories have been under extreme pressure to privatize our public services. And the premise has largely been that the private sector is more efficient than the public sector in the provision of these services. These policies were largely proposed by the international financial institutions that insisted on making these conditionalities of various assistance programs. Privatization efforts, though, have largely failed in the Caribbean, as most public services are still government-owned and operated, including health and education. In Jamaica, however, our light and power and telecommunications were privatized, and the government now plans to sell shares in our water services to Jamaicans by putting stocks on our local stock market. The insidious threat now, though, for us in the Caribbean is public-private partnerships, which may not be as abhorrent as out-and-out privatization to the general population, but the evidence suggests still that public-private partnerships present just as many problems as does privatization. Our governments now are presenting public-private partnerships as the answer to problems faced with funding the provision of public services. Unions in the Caribbean have sought to combat the forces in favor of privatization by the use of social partnership and regional integration. In Jamaica, social partnership is now widely accepted as a preferred vehicle for the development of public policy. For example, with our economic program that has the support of social partners, including the government, the unions, and the private sector. Social partnership was used as a means of being able to stop the forces of privatization by us as unions agreeing with government for job retention as against wage cuts or wage guidelines. In terms of our COVID-19 response, I think we have largely been helped by the fact that our health services are still publicly owned and operated in the Caribbean. In the case of Jamaica, our COVID-19 response was influenced by the government putting in place an economic recovery task force that was multi-stakeholder in nature, meaning that it had all the social partners involved. And so our recovery has now been influenced, our recovery programs have now been influenced by the work of that recovery task force. Our Labor Advisory Council, which advises the Minister of Labor in terms of policies to guide employers and employees, is also a tripartite body, and that body met and put in place policies to guide employers and employees in relation to how to treat with COVID-19 and the impacts. We have also a public sector monitoring committee that made representation and were able to get improvements in terms of paid leave for public sector workers during quarantine and work from home policies where possible, and also that we have had no job losses or pay cuts in Jamaica during the COVID-19 response. And of course, I have to put in brackets there as yet, because that has not happened as yet. We are now in the process of developing another national partnership, which would be able to develop programs for the recovery of Jamaica coming out of COVID-19. We have also in the Caribbean utilized regional integration as a vehicle to be able to deal with our COVID-19 response. And so we have agencies such as CAR for the Caribbean Regional Public Health Association, helping with things like training and testing and quick turnaround time for test results. The Caribbean Cooperation on Health, which is a vehicle of CARICOM, which assists in regional planning for the provision of PPEs, among other things. And of course, collaboration at the level of CARICOM among our governments in respect to the various policy responses. In conclusion, I would want to point to what we deem to be threats that are presented to us now. And the major threat that we have now is debt and how we manage debt accumulation as a result of COVID-19. And so we look forward to the regional response to how we deal with debt and in terms of how it is going to be affecting our individual territories. Thank you.
Thank you, Helen, for your contributions. We've now finalized our second block of the Trade Union. I wanted to thank everybody who participated in this block and your experiences, which is very important for us. And these organizations and their experience will help us continue working. Now, I wanted to thank everybody. I will give the floor to Jordania, who's going to read the final conclusions. Jordania, please continue and conclude our activity. Thank you. Thank you. Brothers and sisters, now I will read the declaration constructed between everybody, between all the federations which were part of this event. What's public stays public. Union Forum of the Americas, October 7, 2020. The Trade Union Confederation of Workers of the Americas, TUCA, together with International Trade Union Federation, ISP, UNI, IndustriALL, ITF, ICM, and IE, and the Comité Brasileiro en Defensa de las Empresas Públicas, stand in defense of public companies and services, particularly essential in times of crisis, for sustainable development and for the quality of life of people. The coronavirus pandemic and shutdown measures to contain it have made visible what we have been denouncing for years: the shortcomings and flaws of the current state model and the global economic policy, with a growing concentration of wealth in the hands of only a few, and the lack of access to quality public services, universal social protection, and decent work for the masses of workers. Today, more than ever, it is necessary to recognize the value of water, seeds, forests, energy, land, biodiversity, ancestral knowledge, public services, health, and education as common goods. We claim and defend the right to access, use, and control these common goods, which must be guaranteed by the states with criteria based on democracy, justice, and sustainability. We claim that what's public stays public for all citizens, with transparency and real participation of society in decision-making, and increasingly aimed at serving the people, especially women, girls, children, youth, the elderly, people with disabilities, people of African descent, and indigenous peoples. Companies and universal public services, in addition to being basic human rights, are fundamental in the process of economic development, social justice, income distribution, and to serve the most needy population. Privatized service only contemplate the interests of 1% of the population. That is, those who control the large transnational companies increase their profits at the expense of workers and of society in general, with very high costs that could be much lower with quality public companies and services under democratic control by the whole of the society. The TUCA and international trade union federations, together with our centrals and national unions, will continue to fight every day against privatization and for democracy, becoming stronger and uniting with more solidarity the trade union movement locally and globally. We will also reinforce the work of alliances with other sectors, social movements and organizations that defend a democratic and rights agenda that includes the demand for a democratic state with a public budget that strengthens the institutions in charge of covering social rights, especially health, education, water, basic sanitation, and social protection, among others. We demand that billionaires and large transnational companies pay their proportional share of taxes, and that the governments of the region promote proposals for progressive tax reforms, in which the 1% of the population pay proportionally more, and the most vulnerable workers and people pay less taxes. We do not accept the growing social inequity in the region that is already the most unequal in the world. We will continue to reject free trade agreements and investment protection agreements, which only favor the interests of large transnational companies, deregulating the state, promoting privatization, prioritizing the rights of transnational companies over the rights of the workers, such as decent work and the increase in the agro-extractive model that destroys our environmental and the cultural heritage of native peoples. A democratic response to the crisis of the neoliberal model, which has been fueled by the pandemic, requires active policies to create employment. We want more decent work opportunities that contribute to the just transition from capitalism that destroys jobs, labor rights, and the environment to a sustainable society. To achieve all these objectives, it is essential to democratically build a new global social contract where the state and public policies must play a key role in favor of the population excluded from the current political economic model. It is necessary to combat the prevailing neoliberal narrative in the region used in the recent decades that what is public is inefficient, corrupt, and depletes the resources of the state. Historical experiences show that public services are essential to overcome crisis, advance towards economic development, decent work, reduce inequalities, and improve the quality of life of the population. Today, some northern countries are putting public services back into public hands, as we have seen that the private sector will never be able to provide basic services with the universality, quality, and values that the public companies can offer. Our union organizations will continue to fight in unity throughout America for quality public companies and services with decent jobs, promoting debates, materials, and the dissemination of studies on the topic, promoting and supporting national companies national campaigns, and joint actions in defense of our claims and where there are threats to what is public. We will take this fight to the different international spaces in our region, such as the Continental Day for Democracy and Against Neoliberalism, of which we are part, the platform Latin America Better Without FTA, and other coalitions. Aware that the fight for jobs, companies, and quality public services goes beyond the union movement, it includes those who fight for human, social, economic, and environmental rights and for a more just society. For a new social contract with decent work and universal access to public goods and services. For a democratic state, a public budget at the service of society, and for tax justice. Against the privatization of the state and corporations assuming control of public companies. If it is public, it belongs to all of us. Because we demand that what is public remains public, because if it's public, it belongs to all of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Jordania. So we are concluding the event. We would like to thank all of you, all of those who have participated in the event. We would like to reinforce that we had unions from Guatemala, Mexico, Brazil, Chile, Colombia, Paraguay, Argentina, USA, Venezuela, Dominican Republic, Peru, Jamaica, Uruguay, Panama, Costa Rica, Nicaragua, and for the SCA, TUCA, the forum has been a success regarding participation and development of joint work with all of the international confederations and the CSA. This shows the unity we have. We would like to say once again that we will have more examples and more activities like these ones so you can participate. I would like to say as well that we have a period for the day against the neoliberalism from the 16th to the 19th of November, where we call all of you, invite you to participate. And I want to say again that many organizations are having campaigns for the World Day of Decent Work. So please join us, and we need to know how important decent work is for us. So we'd like to thank all of you. Thank you to the speakers, the panelists, all of those who were here on Zoom, and to all of those who followed the transmission, the broadcasting on Facebook and the webpage of the PSI, of CSU, and CSI and Union as well. And we will come back with more events with unity because we can build our movement with this. Bye.